Welcome to Kardec Radio. While you wait for our program to begin, check our new site. It's Kardec Flix, where Spiritism is just a click away. Also, check our publisher, Kardec Publisher, and its first 6 books. Each one is a journey to inner empowerment and love. Kardec Radio, where we nourish ourselves daily.
Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Kardec Radio and welcome to another study of the Medium's book. Yes, dear friends, we've been here together for now a few weeks studying this incredible book. Yes, thanks to Allan Kardec, we have this incredible material for all of us to study. Everyone should read and study this book, especially those who are studying mediumship. Yes, because we need to study mediumship. We cannot just close our eyes and think we're going to speak to the spirits. We need to understand, we need to study. So that is exactly what we're going to talk tonight in this beautiful chapter, how we need to use our conscious, our criticism, our logic, our reasoning to understand the types of communications that are out there. Let us recap. This book was published in 1861, 164 years ago. And Kardec, this visionary, this educator who incredibly, he was able to organize this information to us in such a didactic way. Yes, Kardec was a visionary, and we are so grateful to him. And today we are studying chapter 10 on part 2. Remember, there are 2 parts of the Medium's book. We already studied part 1. We are at part 2 now. Chapter 10. Let us reflect for a few minutes before we go to our slides and deep into our study. Why do we need to understand that there are different types of communication? Should we trust blindly of all types of spirit communications that we might come across? Well, thanks to Kardec, we know that is not true. Let us think about it. Would we go around on the streets and just believing in everyone we came across without really using our reasoning? That is so important for us. So we have a few slides here with us. So let us share our screen and let us go directly there to study this beautiful chapter talking about the nature of communications. So Kardec starts by reminding us about this answer that is in the Spiritist book. Starts on question and answer 100 forward. It's chapter 1 of part 2 in the Spirit's book. Kardec says, well, for us to study the nature of communications, we need to study and we need to remind ourselves that there are different levels of spirits on earth. We are all in different levels. Because of that, there will be different types of communication because it will depend on our level of purification or progress or development. So this classification, very well put together by Kardec, is based on the spirit's degree of development, their quality, their imperfections. Kardec says, starting on question 100 in the Spirit's book, that to put together this classification, he doesn't want to be simplistic because it is very complex, but he wants to break it down in a way for us easy to understand. So he brings to us three principal order of spirits that are there: imperfect spirits in the third order, good spirits in the second order, all the way to pure spirits. And what are the differences? And we recommend you to go to the Spirit's book to read in more detail. This is just a recap before we go deeper to the medium's book. Kardec says that imperfect spirits are those spirits that still have the propensity towards evil. They still ignorant. Remember, ignorance is yet the lack of experience, of knowledge, meaning we are all created simple and ignorant, meaning we still have a lot to learn. But spirits in this order that are still in this level of development or perfection, they still have a lot of pride, a lot of selfishness inside of them, and all that results from it. So we know living on earth where we are in this category. We are imperfect spirits because we still have a lot of ignorance, a lot of pride, a lot of selfishness inside of us. So we are imperfect spirits. But once we start perfecting ourselves, being aligned to God's laws, there are those types of spirits classified as good spirits, where they have the constant desire to do the good. These spirits, they are not fluctuated, like they help someone, but they don't help others. They are 24/7 thinking about ways to help the greater good. They never think about themselves. So we can mention a few, right, that we know, like Mother Teresa, like Francis of Assisi, and Chico Xavier, so many spirits that reincarnated on earth and exemplify to us this completely selflessness. And then we have the first order, pure spirits, that they only do the good, they are messengers and ministers of God. And our most perfect example on earth, yes, is Jesus. Jesus is the perfect spirit, pure spirit, who came to earth to help all of us. Okay, dear friends, we were having some technical difficulties, but we are back now. So let us go straight to this chapter where Kardec talks to us about the types of communications. He says there are four types of communications: crude communications, frivolous communications, serious communications, and instructive communications. So let dive deeper to each and every one of this because Kardec brings to us a lot of information. So, starting with the crude communications. What are the characteristics of these types of communications? Kardec says this type of communications contain expressions that shock the core. So they are trivial, they are ignoble, they are obscene, insolent, arrogant, they can be malevolent, and even impious. So those are very crude communications. And as we can already feel, just to think about it, they are very heavy. So the type of spirits who bring this type of communications, they are of that very low order. Spirits that they communicate with what they know. So it's when we come in contact with someone in our lives, in our day to day, and they have this level of communication. A lot of bad words, very obscene, very arrogant. So, why is it important for us to understand this? Remember, we're all mediums. We are not only talking about mediumship that happen behind closed doors during a mediumistic meeting. We are in constant contact of different mediumistic phenomena throughout our day because, as Kardec says in the Spirit's book, the higher spirits told Kardec, we are more influenced by the spirits than we think of. So, we need to have in mind when we use obscene, malevolent, arrogant, ignoble words, expressions, we are connecting with these types of spirits. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to teach our children as well. So this type of communication are from those spirits that are the lowest order. What comes next? Well, next, Kardec brings to us frivolous communications. What are this type of communications? Well, they are characterized by being useless conversations. They talked and talk and talk, but when you try to squeeze the content out of it, there's really nothing to be said. They are witty, they're uh, biting tirades. They can often be these jokes who have mixed of hard truths that are nearly always hit with great accuracy. So, if we could summarize this in the terms that we use nowadays, is when there is a lot of sarcasm. It's that joking way, but at the end, there is that bitter truth that comes out. So, what type of spirits we think? Do we think high elevated spirits, noble spirits would bring to us this type of communications? Well, we know that we can study the language of this type of communications to be able to identify. They come from spirits who are frivolous, who are mocking spirits, who are mischievous spirits. They are cunning, then downright evil sometimes. And they meddle in our communications. Yes, because they're not concerned about the truth. They think it is funny to be able to interfere with people, to be able to deceive people, and they feel this malicious pleasure in misleading those who believe in their words. So, That is why, in the Spirit Society of Virginia, in our educational program, we tell our children and teens that every time we're being sarcastic, we're playing pranks. What type of spirits do we think we're connecting? Do we think these types of spirits only appear at certain occasions? No. They have nothing else to do different from those good spirits, pure spirits who are constantly thinking about the good. Frivolous spirits have nothing else to do. So they are there. Yes, they come, they interfere in our communication, they think it's funny. So we tell our children and teens and adults no, no to sarcasm, to playing pranks and others. Why? Because we are then attracting these types of spirits and connecting with this type of spirits. So then what comes next? We study crude communications, frivolous communications. Well, next, Kardec brings to us serious communications. This type of communications are characterized by not displaying the frivolousness or the crudeness that we just talked about. They have a useful purpose, but they can sometimes not be worried about the greater good. They might have some type of private interest. But important to note is not because this type of communication is serious that it doesn't contain any errors. Interesting. Let us understand what type of spirits would bring this type of communications. They are serious, but they are not always containing the truth. They have a useful purpose, but they might have some type of this self-interested mix in between. Well, Kardec explains to us that this type of communications do come from serious spirits. But remember, it's not because they're serious that these spirits are enlightened. They are ignorant spirits. Imagine, like many of us, we don't know everything. We might say things that we don't know yet, and then it's not because it's done in bad faith, but it's because this type of spirits they don't know yet. So that's why we need to be very careful. It's not because the communication is serious that it contains the truth. So we need to be able to distinguish this truthful versus erroneous communications. How? Kardec says, well, it's not always easy to distinguish because, as it says, this communication is serious. So we need to pay a lot of attention. And he says there are presumptions and sometimes pseudo scholars who may attempt to impose wrong headed ideas and absurd theories. Hmm, so interesting, right, dear friends? We're living on times on earth that we see this so clearly. Spirits discarnated, incarnated, who pose themselves as quote unquote this knowledgeable pseudo scholars spirits who at the end if you truly analyze the message and what they're saying they don't contain the truth. So these spirits sometimes Kardec says they have no scruples. They know that they wanted to pump themselves, so they adorn themselves with respectable, venerable names. They say that they are this or that person. And that's why a lot of people believe them because they portray themselves and they say they are this, that, and other very well known person. So Kardec tells us, what do we need to do? Well, we need to submit all communications to our reason and our logic. So we analyze the communication. It might contain 99 truths, but if there's one statement that we say, they are telling, oh, this is truth, but there is that one point. mm, that's when we identify those type of communications, because is that one false statement that we need to pay attention to identify them, because pure spirits, elevated spirits, enlightened spirits, they only speak about the truth. And most of the times, they don't even reveal who they are or their names. If needed, they will, but sometimes they don't, because they are so humble. They want the message to speak louder than sometimes their names or who they were in previous lives. So we need to pay very close attention. Again, Spiritism coming back to us and reminding us to use our reason. So important. That's the beauty of Spiritism, right, friends? Is the light of reason in our lives. And then, last but not least, we have instructive communications. So, what are the characteristic of this type of communications? Well, Kardec says they are serious communications, but they have a main purpose. They have the purpose to provide us teachings about science, about morality, about philosophy. Their levels of profoundness may depend on the spirit's particular degree of advancement and dematerialization, but they always contain the truth. That is the biggest difference between instructive and only serious communications. Because Kardec says, well, something that is not true cannot be instructive. So, if something is instructive in its nature, it's bringing us a message to instruct ourselves, and it's really instructive, not those lies that we were talking about in the previous messages. Then they're characterized as instructive messages. So, what type of spirits would bring us these types of messages? Well, only serious and enlightened spirits. But again, we need to be able to distinguish these types of messages, right? So, how? How can we do that? Kardec explains to us. He says, we need to have regular and frequent communications. He says it's like us when we go get to know someone, right? When we meet someone, can only in the first few minutes in that conversation, we already know who they are, if they are speaking the truth, who they really are as spirits. No. So he says, why would it be different with the types of communications we receive? So we need that regularity and that frequency to be able to do what he says. First, we need to use our reason and logic to evaluate the moral and intellectual value. So we need to study the message, the communication, and say, what is the moral and intellectual value? And then we assess the degree of trust they deserve. Is Does this make sense? Is this truth? And that is only with a lot of study and time. So we cannot just blindly accept everything that the spirits tell us. No, we need to do what? As Kardec says, we need to observe the facts and analyze the language, dear friends. That is the key and most important message for us. Observe the facts and analyze the language. That's why we always say to practice safe mediumship. Safe mediumship needs to be practiced in a group, in a team, because then we cannot be easily pushed to accept something that is not truth. We are in a group. So we have a lot of eyes, ears, hands, and we do exactly this, as Kardec says. As a group, we observe the facts, not only how was the content, but the circumstances, why the communication was brought to us, what is the language, what is saying, and from there, with that frequency and regularity, we're able to access it. And that's why, friends, we could not emphasize this enough. We need to read and study this book. And that's why, for the first time, we are studying this book together here at Kardec Radio. As Kardec says here in the front page, it's a manual for mediums and evokers. So if we want to practice safe mediumship, we need to study this book. This is a manual. What does that mean? It means that we don't just read it once and we put in a bookshelf and never refer. A manual is something that we always go back, we always refer to it, we always consult it. And if we want to read more, at the not the last chapter, the chapter before the last, chapter 31, Kardec brings to us examples of apocryphal communications. Exactly to do this, this absurd communications. Kardec brings to us examples. Why? Because he himself, he had to do this. He had to observe the facts and analyze the language. He didn't just publish these books without using his logic, his reasoning. He really thought through. And if we look and we read this book, the Spirit's book, Heaven and Hell, and all the foundational books, we see the coherence throughout. That's the beauty of the truth and the beauty what Kardec did, because he did exactly that. He observed the facts, he analyzed the language, and he was able to discern the right from truth from wrong, right? And he was able to compile this magnificent book that is the foundation of the Spiritist doctrine. So let us continue studying this book together, dear friends. If you have any questions, please write to us here at Kardec Radio, and we will be here studying together with you. Next week, we'll be together again with other scholars here studying the Medium's book. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful evening. Bye bye.